Today we're talking about how to avoid empty words in our sentences with concision and precision. We want to do that by avoiding expletives, not the saucy kind, although yes, but we also want to avoid grammatical expletives, which delay the subject and don't really play a true grammatical role in the sentence. That doesn't mean that they're wrong, it just means that oftentimes we can tighten up our language by eliminating them. It is worth noting that certain disciplines actually require the kind of distancing that an expletive or that passive voice would give, but for our purposes, we are going to try to make the choice wisely, and that means just knowing what they are and being able to identify them so we can discern whether the sentence benefits or is detracted from by using the expletive. If you say there is a winged monkey sitting on the hood of your car, you could tighten that sentence up by saying, a winged monkey sits on the hood of your car. In that way, the winged monkey now is doing the action of the sentence and it becomes a lot more active. That, as an expletive, not as a relative pronoun, often plays no role in a sentence. So I hope that your winged monkey did not formerly belong to a wicked witch is better when it says, I hope your winged monkey did not formerly belong to a wicked witch. These are vestiges of our informal conversation and they fall into our writing. We don't need them. So anything that you can do to get your reader to the heart of your sentence faster is helpful. That doesn't mean to say that I don't like long sentences or that you can't have an artful sentence or a sentence with imagery. It just means we don't want all of our sentences to be like that. It is that. This is an expletive construction that sounds really fancy. It is this lack of attention that is causing unicorn overcrowding in our parks. That delay of the sentence at the beginning sounds really academic in some way. I don't know what it is that appeals to us about that particular construction, but tightening that construction, the lack of attention causes. You get the actual idea in the subject part of the sentence, and then you have that idea doing the action. Those things are helpful to readers. We also sometimes use unnecessary infinitives and prepositional phrases. We've already talked about prepositional phrases a little bit in class. But if you talk about how many prepositional phrases are in a sentence, the duty of Thor's Intergalactic Fan Club president is to orchestrate interplanetary fan meetings. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Thor's Intergalactic Fan Club president must orchestrate. That is a much tighter sentence. And what you have is, instead of focusing on the duty, you have the focus on Thor, who is doing the action. And that is always preferable to a clear and precise sentence. So we tighten syntax. If you say, it is this uncertainty that makes me hesitate to build his wooden house for the yard, dragon house for the yard, you can look and see how many phrases are unnecessary. We have that, we have it is, we have to build, and for the yard. All of those could come better. So see if you could think in your own time here to how to tighten that sentence a little bit more. We always want to use direct expressions. These are some on the left that end up in student sentences that can be replaced almost always with just one word. And I'll add a caveat here to say about the word very. Very is almost always superfluous to a sentence, and it is a throwaway intensifier. So if we can, we'll try to avoid using very at all. You want to avoid redundancy too. So if you say something like, it's yellow in color, of course it's yellow in color. What else would yellow be? An ATM machine, so always be aware of what the letters stand for. So essentially you've said the automated teller machine is not taking my personal identification number. And then when you say things like the states of Georgia, Florida, and Alabama, of course those things are states. And a crowd of people, unless you're talking about a crowd of elephants, you don't probably have to specify that it's a crowd of people. And University of Florida is not anything else but a state school, and a party is also a celebration. So these are actual sentences that exist in the wild, and you wouldn't want to make those mistakes in your writing because you want to build ethos and you want to be mindful of your reader's attention. So make sure that every single word counts. Don't try to sound smart, that's in quotation marks. Just talk as clearly as you can, write as clearly as you can. Know when to use meta discourse, and that means talking about your writing. So you don't really want to use a lot of "in this paper I will," but you can frame a concept by referring to the work. So you might talk about someone else's research and your research in contrast. I do not need to know that you are writing a paper because of course you're writing a paper if I'm reading it. I don't need to know about your process. When I was reading this, I found. Of course you were reading it because now you're writing about it. So those are some things to consider. The last thing here on this list is nominalizations. Nominalizations is when we make a noun out of something that should be a verb. So for instance, if you say, "It was his intention to go to the store," that is a much longer sentence, an unnecessary nominalization. You've taken a verb, intended, and made it into a noun, intention. So instead, you could just say, "He intended to go to the store," and that's a much tighter sentence. So a little practice. You can read these sentences and see if you can figure out how to change them. And it's probably pretty obvious by now that we've pointed them out. There are many people willing to help me search for my parrot. You see the expletive at the beginning, so think how you might change that up. The ice cream shop is closed on account of the fact that it needs to renovate in order to appeal to more customers. That's just a clunky sentence and something that we could tighten right up by eliminating some prepositional phrases. A true fact is that when the wind blows, there are more leaves on the ground. I don't even know where to begin with that sentence because it's so full of unnecessary things that it doesn't actually convey much information. So those are some things that you can practice with. Finally, you can take a look at some of these and see if you can identify the expletives just by looking at them and thinking through them very quickly. You'll see the it is, there were, there was, construction all the way through, and I'll post the PowerPoint so that you can take a look at these in a slower time if you'd like. And here are some empty words in the wild. These are real constructions that came from real things published and written by students. And you can take a look at how they defer the meaning and really obscure it in the same way. So we're talking about being concise and being precise. That means saying what you need to say in an economical way, but also saying it with the exact words that you would need to say it. In this paper, I will talk about how the song shows a deeper meaning about life. I see very little in that sentence that conveys anything at all. I don't know what the deeper meaning is. There is not even a reference to the specificity of the song itself. So that sentence does not work as a thesis statement. It does not work as meta discourse. It doesn't work really at all. It doesn't say anything to us. The distressing thing about these chickens is that many of them do not make it out of the coops due to health reasons that are caused from lack of life. That sentence made me laugh for a very long time. And it's one of those sentences that intends to sound smart. But when you ask the writer about that sentence, they will tell you that they just wanted it to sound more complicated and more scholarly than it was, but it ends up not sounding like that. So that's a problem. That's something that we would catch in revision, hopefully. And then here is one that came from an actual paper. It's hard to believe that it got published. It is the moment of non-construction disclosing the absentation of actuality from the concept in part through its invitation to emphasize in reading the helplessness rather than the will to power of its fall into conceptuality. I would argue that that sentence is no better than the first sentence. It doesn't say anything. Certainly it's not better than the second sentence either, because it is designed to exclude. It's designed to sound smart, and it has no real value in the real world. I don't find it to be accessible, and I'm not sure anybody would. So that's the kind of generosity that is lacking in a sentence that doesn't worry about the clarity for its readers. And that's what I want us to avoid. So I hope you've been doing well writing your rough drafts, and that over the course of the next week as we're revising, you'll pay attention to some of these concepts. See you soon.